Welcome to another Inside Gaming review, and this time we're taking a look at a game nearly 20 years in the making, Shenmue 3. This is a game that I and so many others have been desperately waiting for, and it took a very long time to get here. Full disclosure, I backed this game on Kickstarter back in 2015, and was super excited to see the series finally returning. But the wait from 2015 to 2019 was super easy compared to those of us who've been desperate for another Shenmue game since the long gone year of 2001, when the franchise went dark. First, let's get some background on that Kickstarter campaign. Its initial goal was a whopping $2 million, with Shenmue 1 and 2 cinema shorts, multi-language subtitles, a skill tree system, various expansions to explorable areas, and an expanded battle system among the multitude of reached stretch goals. By the end of the Kickstarter campaign, Shenmue 3 hit over $6.3 million raised, which was pushed over $7 million by the time the final crowdfunding donations closed in September 2018. It was backed by a total of over 81,000 people and claimed the title of highest funded video game project in Kickstarter history. So yeah, you could say there's more than a few people excited about this project. But before we get deep into this review, it's worth asking, what the heck is Shenmue? The series was created by Sega alumni Yu Suzuki, who developed games like Afterburner, Virtua Fighter, and Daytona USA. Feeling his career was stagnating, he decided to explore something new. So he began developing a new game around the concept of an open-world RPG for the Sega Saturn. Though, with the Saturn's inevitable failure, development eventually moved to the Dreamcast. The result of his ambition was Shenmue, one of the most unique and ambitious games of its time. So, what is Shenmue actually about? Well, in all three games, you control Ryo Hazuki in his quest to investigate and eventually get revenge for his father's murder. Shenmue 3 does a more than adequate job of giving new players a starting off point with a recap video that hits the main story beats. But for review purposes, here's what you'll need to know for now. Ryo's dad gets done in by a man named Lan Di after Lan Di and his men steal an ancient artifact known as the Dragon Mirror. As his dad dies in his arms, Ryo swears revenge. After some investigating, Ryo learns of a second mirror, the Phoenix Mirror, and finds it buried under his father's dojo, and chases after Lan Di, who has made his way to Hong Kong. Ryo, now in Hong Kong, learns that the mirrors could eventually result in the resurrection of the Qing dynasty. Through a long series of events, Ryo eventually rescues a girl named Shenhua, whose family has ties to the mirrors. Unfortunately, upon returning to Shenhua's home, they find her father missing and only a sword and a mysterious letter left to guide them. These two items lead the duo to a shrine which contains gigantic murals of both the Dragon and Phoenix mirrors. This is where Shenmue 3 starts, exactly where Shenmue 2 left off. And it's such a beautiful touch for those waiting all this time, as not a moment has passed for these two since then. Ryo and Shenhua must begin their investigation into Shenhua's father's disappearance, which will see them exploring Bailu Village, Niaowu, and eventually Baisha. Ryo has to play detective and errand boy through most of the game, with breaks to do some work and gamble to earn some money, and occasionally train in various martial arts moves for his inevitable showdown with Lan Di and various other ne'er-do-wells. Unfortunately, as mentioned by series creator Yu Suzuki, this is not the end of the Shenmue series, and those looking for closure after such a long time will be left with even more questions at the end of the campaign. That said, the ending is satisfying with the thrills and few answers it offers, and it feels good to see Ryo becoming more capable than ever before. As for the gameplay, it's a mixed bag. Controls for walking around are clunky with both keyboard and mouse and controller, and each action has its own unique control scheme, which can be a bit daunting at first, especially for new players in the series. Ryo's movements are as stiff as ever, and it's easy to get stuck in small walkways due to Ryo's hitbox. The button mapping will sometimes switch between interacting with an NPC, opening up your notebook, or various other options at a whim, which is frustrating, as with both keyboard controls or a controller, there are more than enough buttons to have each action dedicated to one button. Meanwhile, the fighting aspect is better than ever. Once you learn the quirks, you'll be pulling off elegant and powerful moves that will easily best some of the biggest, baddest enemies in the game. Learning your opponent's moves, waiting for the right time to strike, and taking advantage of a moment when their guard is broken, all of this makes you feel like you're learning these techniques along with Ryo. If you find the combat a bit too challenging or not challenging enough, you can change the difficulty on the fly without affecting anything else. Be warned, the harder difficulties are no joke, and without proper training, Ryo will hit the ground harder than a sack of potatoes. Though, while this is a martial arts revenge epic, you will be spending most of your time doing everything but fighting until much later on. The game roadblocks you at every turn, halting your story progress and forcing you to grind for money or find items in an effort to solve someone else's problems, just so they'll allow you to continue your quest. But in most cases, the minigames and gambling are fun and varied enough to keep you from getting too frustrated at this fact. So, since you'll be spending a lot of time just wandering around the world of Shenmue 3, does it look any good? Well, first, PC setting customization is very limited. Graphic settings range from low, middle, high, and very high, with no real way to adjust them in any more detail. And that's about it. On the very high setting, it looks on par or slightly better with what you'd see from the previous generations of console gaming, which isn't bad, as because of this, it retains all of the graphical charm from the original Shenmue and Shenmue 2 by keeping that style, albeit with some graphical updates. But part of me expected more, especially with how long the wait between 2 and 3 was, and with how far technology and development tools have come since then. Additionally, Shenmue 3 suffers from a lot of stuttering and random pop-ins, even at the lowest settings. Cutscenes are the worst with this, and can also violently cut from angle to angle, which makes the presentation a bit ugly.
Do you know this man?
Should I?
Does he look familiar?
Sorry, hun.
I see.
Still, it feels like the graphical presentation is a love letter to the classic early 3D era of games, much like how games like Shovel Knight and A Hat in Time bring back nostalgic feels. So if that's what Shenmue 3 was going for, it nailed it. The music in Shenmue 3 will never let you down, though. From the high-energy battle themes to the soothing town music, the mood is immediately set perfectly by the tones that accompany each scene. The absolute highlight is how the music when chopping wood goes from simple and calming to action-packed when you start getting your timing down.
Good. That's the way. You did it. Good. Yeah. That's the way.
On the other hand, the scripting is way off. Ryo's and other NPC responses during dialogue end with just incorrect statements, and it feels awkward.
Excuse me.
What is it? Oh, changed your mind?
No.
This almost completely ruins all the work the music and setting has actually done to get you ready for your daily activities in the game. Shenmue 3 makes me feel like I just woke up from an 18-year coma and ended up in a universe where the Dreamcast was a financial success, which is both magical and a bit confusing. The spirit of the series is perfectly weaved into Shenmue 3, and it feels great to get back to the shoes of Ryo. And ultimately, that's exactly what series creator Yu Suzuki was aiming to make, and what his initial Kickstarter pitch was. So for those who've been desperately waiting to see this cult classic continue, you'll be more than happy with what you see on display. For everyone else, Shenmue 3 is nothing special. Comparing it to other games that came after the release of the original games and further explored this niche genre, Shenmue has not aged well. And by not updating the game's concepts with quality of life improvements or a clear and definite hook, it feels like the Shenmue series will continue to struggle grabbing the interest of the new players it desperately needs to keep the franchise alive. And that's the biggest issue with Shenmue 3. As it does not conclude the story, it banks on the hope of another game in the future, and it learns nothing from the multitude of games of similar genres that came after it. In the end, Shenmue 3 is a very fun mixed bag that contains mostly nostalgia, a bunch of technical issues, aggressive story padding, and some dated gameplay mechanics. And what could have been a brilliant revival to finally give those who love the series so much some closure ends up leaving die-hard fans begging for more from a series that may have finally seen its last. If you're one of those longtime fans, or you just so happen to pick the game up, or you are one of the thousands of Kickstarter backers for Shenmue 3, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And thanks again for watching Inside Gaming.
Today we got a little special one for you. We're reviewing the Google Stadia, and just to set the stage real quick, this is a kind of a quick dive in. We didn't want to do a review in progress, but we should note off the top that this thing's gonna change over time. I mean, it's just launched and it will improve, but for right now, for those of you that want to know should you jump in and get this, we wanted to do the kind of state of Stadia as it is right now, so here's kind of what we think.